Figure 2 shows the way that competition in general has changed in these economies. Economists, as a matter of faith and doctrine, tend to believe that more competition tends to lead to growth. Figure 2 shows the extent to which competition has changed in the jurisdictions you see in front of you. Thus, looking at the World Economic Forum's indicator proxy of the extent of competition in these jurisdictions, we see that Russia has made the largest gains in terms of improving competition within its borders. We see that Brunei has also taken very large steps in roughly from 2011 to 2015 in order to increase the extent of competition, whereas we see in other places such as Vietnam and China, relatively little action has been taken, or people perceive that the results of this action have been relatively minor in terms of increasing competition. The black boxes above each of these bars show the absolute value rather than the change, which is shown in the bars themselves. Thus, we see out of a value of 6, Brunei actually has the highest value of competition, suggesting that not only have the Bruneian authorities been improving the extent of their competition law, but this competition law is actually working to improve competition within the Sultanate. Nevertheless, stepping back and putting Brunei in a wider context, we see that Brunei's competition policy has a long ways to go before it reaches the level of highly competitive economies. Figure 13 shows a competition scope indicator, which you can find out more about in our paper. If New Zealand, Singapore, and the US have some of the widest range of competition within their economies, places like the Philippines and Brunei have almost microscopic amounts compared to these large competitive jurisdictions. Thus, while we've seen that Brunei scores relatively well compared to lesser developed countries, Brunei's competition law and policy has a long ways to go at catching up with other high-income economies. Moreover, as we show in Figure 16, without some kind of big bang competition policy, if Brunei continues with its piecemeal reforms, simply adjusting at the margin its competition laws and policies, then we won't see Brunei catching up very quickly to places like Singapore and the US, which we saw in the last infographic, and Figure 16 shows the correlation between competition indicator and the extent of exports, which might signal the competitiveness of a particular economy. In theory, we would assume that more competitive jurisdictions would have higher levels of exports, particularly if such competitiveness was vis-a-vis other countries. Most countries that we looked at in terms of Brunei's peer group tend to have middling levels of competition and middling levels of exports. Thus, if Brunei wants to stand out from the pack, they're going to have to do a lot more in terms of increasing their competition